Hi, this is Cathleen de Ontiveros, and I'm showing some videos that I recorded earlier. People have been asking about my process because I create a lot of art to wear, a lot of hand-sewn, hand-beaded, heavily embellished clothing and accessories. This is an apron that I'm making, obviously not a practical apron because it has so much hand beading, and I've added flowers with beaded centers and pearl highlights in it. So here you can see that I'm adding in the ties to the side of the apron, and I'm doing all of this sewing by hand. I'm going to use an invisible stitch to attach the tie to the main body part. And I pin everything, and then I look to make sure that the bottom also matches the top because I don't want things to be uneven later. And I'm going to stitch it on the top, and then I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do the invisible stitching going along the back side of it as well. So once I finish the stitching of the tie, I'm going to move on to the embellishment of the beads. And I use seed beads. I buy my beads in a variety of places. Sometimes I find them at the craft stores like Hobby Lobby's or Michael's, sometimes Joann's. Sometimes I order from eBay. If I'm not finding the exact bead that I want, I won't add it to the item. I'll just keep looking before I sew something together that I'm not happy with. And I think that's a really important part of when you're creating art to wear, that all of the pieces match your inspiration, your ultimate vision and what you're making, because you're just going to be happier. There's no reason to do so much work to an item if it's not exactly what you want it to be, which is the whole point of making the handmade art to wear. Here I'm doing the sewing, and I have another video explaining this in detail, but basically I was not really careful sewing this piece together. I can see at the end some of my stitches, but it didn't matter to me because I was going to cover that with some more heavy handmade embellishing over the top of it. So it's just taking little stitches on each side of the fabric. Again, I'm going to put a link for the other video in which I explain in detail how I do this stitch. The fabrics that I'm using, they were a mismatch of fabrics. They were little bits of quilting fabrics and fashion fabrics that I had left over, and I put them together in colors that kind of blended well with everything I was doing, the little bits of floral, the beading, the overlay I did for the skirt. The waistband of the skirt was heavily beaded. I went over it with 3 or 4 rows of different seed beads. And this is an item that will have to be hand washed, and it's not meant to be worn to be cooked in. It is a more of a couture art piece that I made, and it really turned out very, very whimsical and has almost Alice in Wonderland feel to it with the way that the flowers and the beads and the ruffles all look. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this part of the video with the hand stitching. I won't show the back of it, just this front piece. And then later, of course, I'll come over the top, and any threads that are showing from the stitching, I'll just cover with some beads or some flowers. So you don't even really need to be very careful on this part of it. If you know you're going to cover it with an embellishment, it's okay that the thread shows. You don't need to go through the extra step of doing the invisible stitching. You can just absolutely, stitch over the top with a top stitch and then cover it with your embellishment. There was a time when I was making dance costumes, and my instructor who was teaching me at the time, when I made a mistake, she said, that is the perfect place to put a flower. And that's really stuck with me through life, because you can't take your mistakes so seriously. If it's something that's going to show and it's going to, always bother you, then grab the seam ripper, take it out, redo it. If it's something that you can work with, if you accidentally snip through your fabric in a place you didn't want it snipped through, and it's not something that you can't cover, you need to remind yourself, this is the perfect place to put a flower. It doesn't have to be a flower. It can be a patch of beadwork. It can be an applique. It can be, a bow. So this is the perfect way to learn how to add your art to wear, your embellishments to regular clothing as well. If you make a mistake, that's a great place to add an embellishment. So I'm adding some trim work of the seed beads here. I'm doing it a few at a time, and then a little space, and then a few at a time, and another little space. There really isn't a right or wrong way to do this. It's however you feel is the way you want your item to look in the end. So you can take a design and you can sketch it onto your fabric and follow the design, or you can freehand it, as I tend to do. I had some little flowers that I picked up at the dollar store. I love the dollar store for my crafting embellishments. And I'm taking the tops off of the ones that have the right kind of coloring that I'm looking for to go onto my garment. I'm not going to use the leaves in this project. I'm saving them for another time. I'm taking out the little plastic part that's in the middle because I only want to have the actual cloth flower. And I'm going to cut that little snippet, and then the plastic part just comes right out. So when I have enough of these little flowers, then I'm going to start laying them out on my project, and I'm going to pin them in with a straight pin and make sure that I like the design, the layout, and then I'm going to start adding my seed beads in. I've decided to go for a really heavy embellished look on this item. I'm going to use little loops of the crystal beads. These are just a seed bead with a silver lining in the middle. And then I'm going to use some little pearl beads to add into this. And this just gives the flower dimension. I didn't need to add this step. I could have just stitched the beads down and, put like a little button or something in the middle, or an embroidery stitch in the middle. But I really love the 3D artsy look that this gave the item, and it's going to make it unique, one of a kind. Nobody else is going to have it, and I'm going to love this piece for forever. I hope that this helped. If you have any questions, leave them below. I'm going to have some links in the info box below. And as with everything, blessings and happy sewing. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Bye.